On day 9 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Russian forces are hammering Ukrainian cities in as the war has shifted to a brutal phase. Heavy bombardment of urban centers is taking place all over Ukraine while civilian casualties mount. Russian forces have made advances in the south, capturing large portions of Kherson. The Pentagon can't verify if the Russians have complete control of the city, and surrounding and besieging Mariupol. The battle rages. On Thursday afternoon, the 40-mile Russian convoy heading to Kyiv from the north that has received so much publicity came under attack from Ukrainian aircraft and artillery. The fact that the Russian Air Force, despite its numerical and technological superiority, has failed to achieve air dominance 9 days into the conflict shows how ill-planned the invasion was. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense claimed that as of Thursday, Ukrainian forces have killed, wounded, or captured approximately 9,000 Russian troops, destroyed 30 fighter, attack, and transport jets, 31 helicopters, 217 tanks, 90 artillery pieces, 900 armored personnel carriers, 42 multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, 2 boats, 374 cars, 60 fuel tanks, 7 anti-aircraft batteries, and 3 unmanned aerial systems. As always, the accuracy of these numbers is shrouded in a fog of war and expected hyperbole. Footage from the ground, however, does show heavy Russian losses. For example, a video emerged on social media showing the aftermath of an ambush. Ukrainian Special Operations Forces had surprised and destroyed a column of Russian VDV, Russia's airborne troops, in Irpin, close to Kyiv. Large-scale Russian surrenders or attempts to actively avoid fighting are still taking place. Footage from the ground shows Russian troops abandoning their vehicles en masse so as not to get into the fighting. In one instance, a Russian unit abandoned 4 Tu-22 Tunguska air defense vehicles parked in a row in the woods. Ukrainian troops captured and destroyed them. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, Moscow has committed more than 90% of its preposition forces in Ukraine. In addition, vehicles and troops from elsewhere in Russia are starting to move toward Ukraine to reinforce the battered invasion force. Moreover, heavy fighting at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe, threatened a nuclear disaster. Russian forces captured the nuclear plant after a fierce fire that caused a fire. Off the rails or a great strategist? In a call with French President Emmanuel Macron, Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated his commitment to topple the Ukrainian government and occupy all or a large portion of Ukraine. But that would require forces larger than what the Russian military can provide, with the credible, based on what we have seen so far, assumption that the Ukrainian population will be hostile to the Russian occupiers and will resist. On another note of absurdity, Russian lawmakers voted for new legislation that would enlist to the Russian military any person arrested for protests against the war. To make matters worse, these conscripts would then be forced to fight in Ukraine in a modern version of the notorious penal battalions of World War II. The second round of negotiations between the two combatants yielded an agreement to create humanitarian corridors in besieged cities that civilians can use to flee. U.S. says new intelligence shows Russian plans to create pretext for invading Ukraine. The United States has obtained intelligence indicating that Russia has formed a plan to stage a false attack, which would serve as justification for an invasion of Ukraine, according to the U.S. State Department and U.S. officials quoted in news reports on February 3. The officials said the plan was revealed in declassified intelligence shared with Ukrainian officials and European allies in recent days. The plan potentially included videos showing a staged attack depicting the graphic aftermath of an explosion, including equipment appearing to belong to Ukraine or allied nations, said an unidentified official. This video, if released, could provide Putin the spark he needs to initiate and justify military operations against Ukraine, the official said. This would include the possibility of having separatist leaders in eastern Ukraine invite a Russian intervention. The U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor, Jonathan Feiner, said in an interview that the U.S. didn't know for sure Russia would take such a route, but we know that this is an option under consideration. Feiner told U.S. broadcaster MSNBC that it would involve actors playing mourners and corpses to represent bodies of people purportedly killed. State Department spokesman Ned Price confirmed that U.S. intelligence has gathered the information. He told reporters that the United States is publicizing it to lay bare the extent of Russia's destabilizing actions toward Ukraine and to dissuade Russia from continuing what Price said was a dangerous campaign. Officials did not release any direct evidence of the plan or say how they learned of it because they did not want to risk compromising their sources and methods. It also was not clear that senior Russian officials had approved the operation. A British government official quoted by the New York Times said the United Kingdom had done its own analysis of the intelligence and had high confidence that Russia was planning to engineer a pretext to blame Ukraine for an attack. The details of the intelligence, the official said, are credible and extremely concerning. The allegation is the latest by the US and Britain that Russia is plotting to use a false pretext to go to war against Ukraine after amassing more than 100,000 troops near its border with its neighbor. In December, the White House accused Moscow of developing a false flag operation to create pretext for an invasion, and Britain recently named Ukrainians it accused of having ties to Russian intelligence officers plotting to overthrow Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Russian airstrike kills 6 people in village near Kyiv. Markalivka, Ukraine. A Russian airstrike has killed 6 people, including a child, in the village of Markalivka near Kyiv, regional police say. 2 adults and 2 children were wounded in the airstrike and rushed to a hospital, the Kyiv Regional Police also announced. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights said earlier in the day that as of midnight, March 3, there had been 1,006 casualties, including 331 deaths, registered among civilians in Ukraine since Russia started its invasion of Ukraine on February 24. The statement said that the real number of casualties among civilians in Ukraine may be much higher. Ukrainian authorities said on March 2 that more than 2,000 civilians had been killed by Russian strikes since last week. Ukraine's presidential office on March 4 quoted children's ombudswoman Darya Herasimchuk as saying that 28 children had been killed and 64 wounded by Russian attacks on towns and cities across Ukraine.